work with children between the ages of 0 to 20, making sure that they're up to date with their well child visits, immunizations, and vaccines. And so, again, I thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I would also like to bring on Mrs. Wallace, Miss April, if you can go ahead and give us an introduction and tell us what that NSM means.
Inside joke. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm April Wallace, joining here from Bowie, Maryland. I am the mother of two sons. One is 21 months and the other is 7 years old. So a vet in the breastfeeding game. I am representing myself, but also I work for American Heart Association, and I specifically work on an initiative called Voices for Healthy Kids, where we support the equitable policy solutions passing of local, state, and tribal campaigns. And so we support all policies that are supporting children from the age of from birth to all the way until they are 18 years old. And we also work on policies that support families as well. So around health and nutrition. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And shout out to your organization for not just focusing on the kids, but also the families, because
absolutely,
it's a family effort. Janelle, I'm going to bring you on for your introduction.
All right. Well, thank you, Sabrina. Hi, everybody. My name is Janelle Chavis, and I live in Washington, D.C. I have 3 children, 6, 5, and 3 years old, 2 girls and a boy. And I breastfed them all some way, form, or fashion. So I have a lot of breastfeeding experience. And I'm representing myself, of course, but also April, you talked about health and nutrition. I actually have an undergrad in nutrition and dietetics and a master's in public health. I use neither one of those degrees in there, but I do have that educational background. Currently, I work as a communications manager for an association management company. So that's a little bit about me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I love how you're looking at your degrees every time you go into your office, like, what?
I have them.
You have them, and they open doors. It may not be the door you're in now, but it opened doors.
Exactly. It opened the doors. Yeah.
It opened doors. Marjorie, could you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sabrina. My name is Marjorie Stroman. I am a mother of 2 active boys, 8 and 3. I have breastfed them both up until 2.5 years. And I'm kind of just like Janelle a little bit. I got some degrees. I got an MPH as well, but not using it. So I am currently an entrepreneur, a real estate investor, and short-term rental host, coach, and consultant.
5-star.
And 5-star. Okay. Yes. So I actually had a check-in this morning, so I had to get that done before I got on the live. So yeah, I'm here representing all the breastfeeding moms. Love it. Something I wanted to do, and I said I was going to do it, and I did. So yeah.
And thank you guys for your time. And one thing we're going to do is get a degree. Okay. That's one thing we're going to do. So like I said earlier, I remember when I navigated my maternity leave, I'm a planner. Okay. So when I navigated my maternity leave and I didn't have a plan, I was like, so they just send you out and you come back, and what happens while you're out? What happens before you come back? And a recurring thought I had was, how come nobody said anything? Nobody said a word. Nobody talked about it. We always talk amongst, maybe, we'll talk amongst our closest friends, our closest family members, but it doesn't extend to that, and the conversation doesn't happen. So because I know, April, you are a planner, this is what we do. I'm going to kick off my first question with you. So if you did, how did you plan and prepare for your maternity leaves? And I know you had 2 different ones at 2 different times in your career, but especially regarding your breastfeeding goals, how did you approach that?
So as much planning as I do, I will say that I was very naive in the planning for this breastfeeding journey and for my maternity leave. Now, I did do transition plans both times, absolutely. And I had meetings with my team members to talk about that transition plan, but nothing about that prepared me for what I was going to experience as a new mother. And also, I did the research on the pump that I thought I would need. And that was as far as my planning really went around the breastfeeding part. I was like, all right, I'll use this pump. I took one parenting class, check, I got it. And that was really the extent of the planning that I did the first time around. And I don't know that things even went as I expected. I only knew one mother who had breastfed before me, who was able to share her experience. And it was still very much, there are some friends who really kept me supported in those first couple of weeks, because you don't know what the mental game that you're about to face going into. And so I think for me, it was really the mental preparation. And so the second time around, my planning was very much around my mental health and what I needed to have in my toolbox, but also I was thinking about my body and what I needed to nourish myself. So I did have a plan the second time because I knew what I experienced the first time. And I was so anxious, and I was like, I don't have to go into this the same. I know now that I know, I have my little toolbox of what I needed to really mentally really get my head in the game. And, during that adjustment period, so it felt much more natural and I was much more prepared the second time.
And I love that you actually applied the, if you know better, you do better, because that doesn't always happen. So it's good that you were able to say, hey, this was my experience the first time. Let's not replicate this the second time around. Marjorie, what about you? How did you plan for your maternity leave, or did you prepare for it, and did you have any specific strategy in place, and did it change from baby 1 to baby 2 like April?
It always changes. First time I did all the research you could think of. I'm on YouTube University. I did breastfeeding classes because it was like, I'm going to do this. And then first baby gave me a run for my money because he wouldn't latch. And when he did latch, it hurt so bad. Like every time he latched, I literally cried because it hurt so bad. And so then I found a breastfeeding group that really helped me through it. And so once I got through that, I was able to be okay. And the things that I learned from the first time, I just took it into the second baby. And thank goodness it was smooth sailing after that, the second baby.
I love to hear that. And I love that you were able to have the smooth sailing, because I was at an event last night where it was Babies Born Healthy was doing a screening for the chocolate milk documentary. And it was the first time I had ever seen the documentary, and it was a beautiful thing. And there was a woman who was in there, and she's having her 4th baby. And she was like, I know what I'm doing now. She was like, I got it. I messed up, or, I fumbled and I made my mistakes the first few times, but I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Amina, what about you? How did you plan and prepare for your maternity leave with my homie little Chase?
Homie Chase. He has all the nicknames. So for me, I think I did the same. I'm very much a planner. I planned for work, and that's kind of where I went wrong. I wasn't prepared for becoming a first-time mother. I was planning for, what are they going to do without me for all this time? Now, granted, I took all the time I was supposed to take plus some. I said, I'm taking this time. Yeah, exactly. But I kind of look back at, I really should have put that into preparing for what was to come, because during my maternity leave is where I spent all that time learning. And as you see, Chase, Kurt, we've been learning together as we go ever since.
So you made sure you had your transition plans right along with April, and you were taking care of work, but you didn't take care of you as you would have. Yeah, looking back, it's like, okay, I could have done something different to make sure I was okay. What about you, Janelle? I know that you have a different experience than some of the mamas here with your other children, but how were you when you were in the office setting? How were you able to plan and prepare for becoming a breastfeeding parent and still being, a working woman?
Right. Yeah. So like I said, I have 3 children. breastfed all of them, but only had to go through the maternity leave process with my first. And so when I was pregnant with her, I'm doing all the things, Marjorie, like you were saying, I was researching all the things, learning all the things. I took some breastfeeding courses and childbirth courses. I took the Bradley method class and learned, and many moms may know about that natural birth class. And I felt like I was as prepared as I guess I could be. But, you're never as prepared as you need to be when the baby actually gets here and you're like, okay, now I have to like keep you alive. But but I knew, like, going into breastfeeding, I knew I wanted to breastfeed. Breast milk is free. I knew that it was the best thing for my baby. And so I did feel pretty prepared. However, once my first baby came, I had challenges with latching, and then I started pumping and I had like an oversupply. And so I had like this huge stash. Like I had to go buy like a deep freezer at one of those places. And I was trying to actually find the picture prior to this live, but I couldn't find it. It was, 6 years ago. But I started doing that, but then the problem was I was pumping so much and giving bottles. So I'm going back to work now, and I'm pumping at work, and my baby got used to drinking that bottle, and so she quit latching really, really early on, and that actually helped me decide how I was going to enter into my second breastfeeding journey with my second child. And I was determined to have her latch. And we had our difficulties too with latching. And she had a tongue tie, ended up having to get that clipped. And, we had our own journey with that. But in the contrary, while I was essentially a exclusively pumping mom with my first child, I turned into a mom that was, I used to always say my second child held me hostage because never took a bottle the entire time. I nursed her for a year. And so anyways, two different experiences, and even a different one with my third. But I did prepare at work, told the job. They were supportive and all of that. And I learned a lot during that first child, for sure.
Listen, you see, sometimes you ask God for like strength and patience, and like something crazy happens. You ask for a baby that latched. He said, I got something for you.
I got you.
I got you. No problem. For a whole year.
Stay left.
Right. Stay left. And it's something that April said earlier, that, sometimes even when we flourish in our professional avenues and we're planners and we're this at work, that doesn't always carry on to ourselves, right? We're taking care of everybody else, using all of our strength with everybody else, and we skip over the primary person. Mm-hmm. So the order of this question is absolutely intentional. To have our communications manager be the first one to tell us about this, Janelle. So how did you communicate your maternity leave plans to your employer? Did you discuss with them your intention to breastfeed? Did you have any conversation about returning back to work and pumping?
Yes, I did. And at the time, so I live in DC now, but when I had my first child, I was living down south, and I had a really supportive company. I worked for an organization that it was pretty small. So I feel like it kind of had like a little family feel to it. Mm-hmm. And they were supportive. I had my own office too, which helped a lot. And so when it was time for me to pump, I would just close my blinds and shut my door and lock it. And I would be pumping in my office. And I had a little section in our refrigerator at our office, and everyone knew that was Janelle's breast milk, and don't mess with it unless there would even be like jokes in the office, like I think we were like out of creamer one day. I would just be funny with it. That's how the relationship I had with some of my coworkers at the time. So I felt blessed. I had a very supportive office, and my employer, he just told me to do what I needed to do, essentially. And I was pumping every 2 hours or something when I was there. And I even had some coworkers print out a graphic with a milk bottle and something, and it was Janelle's pumping, and I would put it on my door before I pumped, so people could see do not disturb kind of thing. So yeah, I ended up having, I know that's not everyone's story, but with that situation, I ended up having a very supportive workplace.
Listen, that is beautiful, because first of all, that your lead or whoever it was like, hey, no, come back. I know this is important to you. Let's make it work. And also you had your office, but even if you didn't have your office, I'm feeling like they still would have found a way for you to safely pump and, be comfortable while you were doing that. When I was in corporate America, I was contract based. So it was project dependent. So I could go to one project where the person was like really welcoming and they had a plan and they understood. And then I can go to another project of a man who is acted like he has never seen a baby a day in his life, doesn't know how that child eats, and doesn't know what breasts are for. So, it depended on the project. So that I'm glad that you didn't have that experience. Marjorie, what about you? Were you able to, or did you plan to communicate your plans to your work, either your manager, your supervisor, or the people that you were supervising, and your intentions to breastfeed upon your return back?
Yes, I sure did. Y'all gonna know this is what I'm doing, and y'all ain't got no choice but to let me do. But no, I really had a supportive company as well. I have my own office. I can close it, lock the door. I created a sign with the cow on it and said milking in progress, put it on the door. But what made it much easier, I have to give a shout out to Leanne and Ashley. So with my first baby, Leanne had her baby a year prior, and she was very serious about breastfeeding. So she kind of started that whole thing for me where they knew that, okay, we're serious about breastfeeding. So when I came along, they got the memo, And so the second time around, Ashley, this is why you tell your friends to apply for supervisor roles in your company. So so she was a breastfeeding mom and she became my supervisor. And I was so happy because the supervisor that was before her was still there, but she never had any kids. So I don't think she fully understood. So having Ashley there, being my friend and being a breastfeeding mom, she understood the process. So my process was easy peasy, thank goodness. Of course, people are going to say stuff and she's always in there pumping. Is she really in there pumping? They have their suspicions, like I'm just taking a break or whatever. But for the people who truly understood and my supervisors, they were good to go. And I had a great experience. Thank God.
That's a beautiful, first of all, and what if I am just in here?
We all deserve rest.
Right. I'm not a workhorse. What if I am in here doing nothing?
America.
Right. All of us are like, no. April, going on to you. Were you able to communicate your plans? Did you even think to communicate your plans about your intention to continue breastfeeding when you returned back from maternity leave?
So first of all, I have been remote for almost 10 years now. So I've been working from my home. So the challenges or the things that you ladies have described, I didn't even have to experience. I was in the comfort of my own home. And on that first baby, you heard that pump in the background on multiple conference calls.
Right.
And I would just say shout out to my leadership team. I was reporting to a different supervisor at the time, but nonetheless, just as supportive as my current supervisor is. And so in my transition back, it was more so I was concerned about the travel that I do. So though I am remote, I do have to travel for work. And I knew that upon my return to work with my first pregnancy, I had to hit the road probably 2 weeks after I got back. So all of my concern, my worry, my anxiety was around the travel portion of it. How early to get to the airport, all these things. And we can talk about that later. But like one of the things that became important to my team was that April had a room with the refrigerator in it. When she has to check out of her hotel, the hotel staff know that she needs to refrigerate her milk. And so my team really has been supportive. I'm working on 2 different teams, with 2 different babies, but both teams very supportive in making sure that all my accommodations were met. If I'm in the meeting, they're making sure that I have a room very nearby so that I can take my breaks and go pump. On this second baby, shout out to my coworker, we were both pumping at the same time. We both had babies like a month apart. So they knew like that room was getting a lot of action when we were having our in-person meetings. So it was very supportive environment, has been a very supportive environment. And so it was kind of like, I'm nursing and that was it. And they went into action. And so it's been a very family friendly, very welcoming environment. And I even remember when I was leaving the meeting, one of my coworkers, she's like, "Do you have your cooler?" I'm like, "Yes, I have my cooler." So they're checking on me. So it's been a beautiful experience with both babies, honestly.
This is going to be a conversation that is going to show, hopefully, that people in leadership, leadership positions have sense and can provide supportive, placing like supportive systems around their moms. What about you, Amina? What did you communicate? Did you tell them, hey, when I come back in here, and were you working at a breastfeeding organization at the time where you were breastfeeding?
That's an excellent question. Thank you so much for asking that, because I didn't really give that background prior to starting with the DC Breastfeeding Coalition and starting my journey into lactation. I worked for an insurance company in Columbia, Maryland, and I was very, very into my job. I'm one of those people that when I'm doing the work, I do the work fully. So when I left, I set up the plan for work and what was going to take place in my absence. And in my return, it was actually during my maternity leave that myself and another coworker, actually one of my employees at the time, were going to be returning about a month apart, and we didn't have a lactation room. And so during my maternity leave was when we were setting up the space so that we can both continue to pump and have all the accommodations necessary in order for us to begin pumping. But I think, Sabrina, one of the funny stories that I told you is even in my return to work with the lactation room, that going back and forth, stopping what I'm doing, having to go to the room just became something that, for me, mentally stopping what I'm doing in order to go pump, it just did not work for me. And so I truly take it as a blessing that I worked in an environment, it was an open cubicle, where they were very respectful to my space and very comfortable with me putting on my cover and strapping on and continuing to work, because that's what I felt was necessary for me. And, funny enough, one of the sales reps would come around, just peek his head in the corner and say, can I come around? Like, I hear the zzz, zzz, zzz,
right.
Zzz, and I was like, give me 5 more minutes, but I just love the fact that I had that flexibility to do that. And it was, again, one of those, as I'm going, I'm learning, and it actually is what began me on the lactation journey, just my own story and my struggles and things.
And so the place that you were at may not have had a lactation room, but they allowed you to create one. They allowed you and your coworker to create one, which is a form of support. I think what a lot of people do not understand, or maybe have a hard time grasping, is support doesn't have to mean like you are full out, like you have lactation rooms, you have this, you have that all at one time. Support can be incremental. Right. And support can also just be you relinquishing the control a little bit to let somebody else step in and do what they need. I had a client she was working in a police station. So she wasn't a police officer, but she was working in a police station. And Janelle, when you said down south, I was like, I hope it wasn't Florida. I love my hometown. I love my home. I love them. I love my home state. But I also know where I'm from. And she said they would not let her pump. Like, they just straight up were like, no. They didn't give her a room. They didn't give her a closet. They were just like, no. And Florida, at the time when she was pumping, did not have breastfeeding rights for parents. So she literally had no choice. They were like, you can either go in your car during your lunch break and pump, or you can drive home and pump because you live close by. And it was like, I'm thinking, this is a police station. You bring people in here for questioning. I'm sure there's a room. I know there's one room that we could designate, for pumping, but it just wasn't a priority. And one of the things that moms worry about when they are expanding their family, going back to your transitional plan, April, is, are they going to be able to return back to work, to the career that they hopefully love? Your job really does have an impact on your lactation journey. Whether it's a good impact or bad impact, it does have an impact. Like Janelle, what you were saying, when you had an oversupply, and a lot of people think oversupplies are fun. until you are connected to a child or a pump every 2 hours, or you are in pain, or you're continuously getting mastitis, when you're engorged, So a lot of people have that notion that this is what I want to do, but you really don't want to do that. And the fact that you were already in that position and didn't try to, but you were in that position and you still had to maintain that at work, because as your child gets older, you can expand out your pumping sessions. But if you're an oversupplier and you're constantly engorged, you have to continue doing that. And Marjorie, I know you already said it, and actually this is the question for everybody, that, your workplace was supportive during your maternity leave. And one of the things that my company had did at the time was they banned travel for a year for returning moms. So if you were a returning parent, that's the only good thing. If you were a returning parent, you did not have to travel for a year. Wow. Even though that one of my first projects back, they were like, hey, you want to go to Nashville? And I was like, no. But they said you can travel for a year. So in other ways, Marjorie, how did you feel that your company was supportive? Did you know if they had a lactation policy in place? Was there a travel ban in place for traveling employees after they came back from maternity leave? Or you were fine because your friend was your supervisor?
You know what? That's something I didn't do research on, is the rules, regulations, any policies that had to do with breastfeeding. This was something I was going to do. And I don't know if I just expected them to jump on board, because I'm like, Mom, like, what do you want me to do? This is how I feed my child.
Right.
And so it's so crazy. I did not look at the policies. I was just like, y'all, this is what I'm doing. And
that's what you did.
That's it.
Knocking my door. So I don't know how I would have been, like with the whole police station situation, but knowing my mindset now and how much I really did want to breastfeed my kid, I probably would have quit my job, because I was that serious about breastfeeding my child. And I also had an oversupply like Janelle, and I had to pump a lot. Like, I had to buy a deep freezer as well to put all my breast milk in there. So thank God for the friends. Thank the previous people that came, because I did not do that research. And I don't know if I would have been ready if they weren't as supportive. I don't know how ready I would have been to accept that and what I would have did in that situation.
Yeah, so. I totally get that. I would have been like Amina. I would have been with my pashmina, my shawl, my cover up. We would have been at the cubicle together, and people would have been bobbing and weaving to the sound of my pump, because I still have to get this milk. And I was not an oversupplier. When I mentioned this to the group yesterday at the chocolate milk documentary, they looked at me like, what? I nursed for 4 years and didn't make more than like 2.5 ounces per breast at a time. Like maybe 2.5, I mean, 3 would have been, I don't even expect 3. I had to pump in order to, put all these pump sessions together to have enough milk for the next day. I didn't need a deep freezer. I didn't even really need a freezer. Okay. I really just was like, if I don't pump today, he's not eating tomorrow. So it was a requirement that I had to pump, and the support had to happen. Amina, did you have any pushback when you were initially trying to get that lactation room set up? Or did you have any conversations with other other coworkers, and they said, I didn't get support, I wish I had, or, what was that situation like for you?
So, to be honest, it wasn't much pushback. They were able to just accommodate what we needed. I think if, trying to decorate and get fancy was maybe the only thing. It's like, Amina, okay, do you really need the big chair? Yes, I need the big chair. Right. But it was very, very smooth. And, even when I think about the travel, because I also had to travel, and that became, my husband will tell you, if I have to do something, I'm going to research what's the best efficient way to get it done and what gadgets can I get with it. And I just figured out how, to do that for myself, and was able to accommodate whatever traveling or whatever was happening for work purposes. But it really did come from having a supportive team. And so hearing about the young lady who worked at the police station, that just, I'm curious to know more about what happened and how did they overcome that, or how did she overcome that?
I'll tell you, she went in her car and pumped. She went in her car and pumped for a long time until she got tired. And I know that if she had the support that she needed at work, her pumping journey would have lasted longer. But like you said, Amina, earlier, where you're like, having to stop what you're doing to go to the room, she had to stop what she was doing and get out of the building, go to her car or go home. And I'm sitting here trying to send her laws, and I'm like, I forgot you were in Florida. There are no laws. I'm like, no, tell them this. She's like, Sabrina, they're not going to help. And I'm just like, ugh, my heart was broken. Janelle, what about you? I know your environment was supportive. Do you know if that support happened, because a person came back from maternity leave and they didn't have it? Or because you said it was a smaller organization, did they already think about their employees from the jump with the policy?
I think that's what it was. I think it's because it was a smaller organization and there wasn't a lot of, it was actually probably more men than there were women. And I really don't, I think they valued the employees though, and they wanted us to be happy and healthy, and which matters if you care, just generally just care about your employees. Also, and maybe this was the biggest reason why it was so easy for me. My boss actually, his daughter was a high school friend of mine. And so that probably, but we went to different high schools, but we just connected this during high school years and we became friends. And so she also was having children at the time too. And I think the fact that he had grandbabies that and a daughter who was breastfeeding helped him, just have a kinder heart and posture towards me. So that probably helped as well. But yeah, I do think that those factors, along with the fact that they didn't want to lose what we did, like our role. I don't think they wanted to lose employees like that. And so I think they saw this as a small thing that they could essentially do. And it didn't affect our productivity, and when I was in my office, I was still able to do things, even while I was pumping, if it's attached to you, and I'm
right.
typing sometimes. And so there were some times where I would do it over lunch break and I'd have, something on Netflix up or something, but that's my business. But
right.
I completed my work, and it wasn't a distraction for anyone else. And I really felt blessed to have that situation at the time. Mm-hmm.
What you said is so big because it's true, right? You were still productive, because anybody in any type of relationship, whether it's a family relationship, a friend relationship, your partner, people do more when they feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, and that's literally it. Like, they care that let's make sure she has her space. Let's make sure she has this. Let's make sure she has what she needs. Because if I am too busy sitting in my mind state of scarcity and trying to grab and claw and put something together, where do you think my mind is going to be at in terms of my work? Mm-hmm. How if I am not supported in my position and as a human, because I'm not just a resource, how do you expect me to turn around and be able to give a good output for you? And April, I know that you said you've been virtual and that they've been supportive because you were going to do it because you're at your house. Okay. Mm-hmm. But that support when you're traveling is a big deal. I know that there are some companies that contract with a company called Milk Stork. And I don't know if people here or in the audience know who Milk Stork is, but if you don't, Milk Stork, and I don't get nothing from it, I just really love the company. And I love when a company does right by breastfed women, by women, period. But Milk Stork is a company where they will come and transport your milk for you. Mm-hmm. And it is not cheap, as it should not be, because you're transporting valuable things and they have to do certain things for it. But there are a lot of companies that provide subsidies or will reimburse you for that. So what did the support look like for you, April, when you were traveling? Did you ever come into a situation where the hotel didn't want to store your milk for you? And how did you navigate that?
So thankfully, I've never had that happen to me. And shout out to American Heart Association for providing Milk Stork as a service to nursing moms. But I think the biggest challenge for me was making sure there was actually a refrigerator that could keep my milk cool or a freezer. So sometimes there were some special requests and some special accommodations that had to be made at certain hotels. But for the most part, they were very accommodating. And I will say that also the accommodations have dramatically improved from baby 1 to baby 2 because milk stork was not available to us 7 years ago when I was breastfeeding my first son. But this round, milk stork was available. I did not use it, but I thought it was really great that had been implemented for nursing moms across the organization. We travel a lot, and so it's necessary for certain ones. And just that idea of trying to plan ahead to leave my baby behind and doing the calculations in my mind and on paper, trying to figure out how many ounces my baby is going to need while I'm gone. So that was really the stressful part. But getting to, the airports also could be stressful, trying to plan what time I got to the airport. Do I need to get there in time to pump before I get on the plane? Do I have a layover? Am I going to have time to pump during my layover, or do I have to hold this until I get to my final destination? Do I have a nonstop? So all those things. Where are the pumping lactation rooms in the airport? If there are. So from pregnancy number 1 to pregnancy number 2, that has changed dramatically. Number 1, I was in some unsavory locations trying to pump milk. Number 2, there's apps for that, right? So you can find the location when you get to the airport. But again, it takes that planning in advance to kind of figure that out. So just that being really my biggest challenge. And then the cleanliness of those places. I know all the rooms coast to coast at this point, but it's, those are my biggest challenges. And getting to the locations, the hotels were fine.
Well, you're going to have to think another one because that's another question I have about additional challenges. But, one thing, just a random tip for people, if you are somewhere, and I know you guys have probably done this before, but if there's anybody who's listening or watching who doesn't know this, I don't have it with me. I don't know why I'm looking for it. I just gave it away. If you are somewhere, there are, y'all remember the little, not remember, I'm saying remember because my child's 9. The Ziploc bags where you can put your parts in and throw it in the microwave for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's an option for moms if you don't know if you are traveling. They're like little sterilization kits, essentially. And the heat from the microwave, I mean, if you don't use microwaves, I don't know. But the heat from the microwave will sterilize it in enough time for you to be able to use it again until you're home where you can actually wash it with soap and water. So just another option for folks out there. And no matter how much preparation we do, challenges do come up, right? And I guess one of the things that was the hardest for me in motherhood was not having a plan for said challenge because I never saw it before. I never experienced before. I've never made a person before. So I had no plan. I had no option. But Amina, what about you? What were the biggest challenges, if any, that you encountered while you were trying to balance, your breastfeeding and pumping at work?
So I say this with such kindness in my heart towards myself. I was 40 when I had Chase, and already being here 40 years, you think you know everything, and you're
you got your degree and everything.
And you got your degree and everything, exactly. And I just the change of what becoming a mother was just very unexpected for me. That and as a planner, I would say, I remember saying to the nurse, "It's time to go." We were there 5 days, and I said, "Okay, what are you sending me home with?" And there was nothing but just the discharge papers. And I'm like, where's the work instruction? I gotta take care of this child for the rest of his life. What am I supposed to do? So that was just something that was, that was probably my biggest struggle for work experiences. Taking my mind off of or switching up from being that go-getter and everything was focused around work to now I'm prioritizing myself and my child and my family was different for me. I say all that to say that was a different experience for me because I was older at the time that I had my child, and already who I was, I people like to say I am who I am, but the transition of who I became and who I'm becoming was just different. And I wasn't as, that's not something you could plan for, is the best way I can say it.
Absolutely. Man, you said a word, because when we must have been having the same experience when we gave birth, when I gave birth. My wonderful supportive husband was next to me, but when I gave birth, and they gave me the discharge papers, and because I don't like to cry in front of people, right? So I'm still working on it. I know it's a thing about like being emotionally vulnerable. I get it. I know. I'm sitting there and she's going over the papers with me, and I'm like, okay, she's, checking them off because she's used to this. She does this every 25 minutes, right? So she's just checking off the discharge papers. She's like, do you have any questions? I'm like, no. She gives him the papers. I almost throw up from anxiety. Not from the child I just bore. I almost threw up from anxiety. And my wonderful husband is standing there. He just saw me give this woman my best smile. And the second she walks out, I start crying. And he's like, oh God, what happened? I'm like, what do they expect us to do? That we're just going to leave with them? Is anybody going to come check on them? Like, is there going to be a welfare check? Like, can somebody, and really the check was for me. Like, if somebody's going to come and check on me, y'all just going to leave me here with this human that I have to raise? So I totally get that. I was terrified. And I think one of my biggest challenges, was trying to wrap my mind that I don't have control. Mm-hmm. That was a big challenge for me. And pregnancy really humbles you. It can really humble you. Some people have wonderful pregnancies. They glow, they shine, and it's not sweat. It's really glow. Like, it's a beautiful thing. My pregnancy was not like that. So it very much was like the challenge of this body is no longer mine. And really the same thing for breastfeeding until you can get like a schedule. It's like your body is really not yours. Your body is here to sustain your human. Janelle, what were the experiences or the biggest challenges that you encountered when you were breastfeeding and returning back to work?
Yeah, I think just similar to what you guys shared is just not really knowing, like doing a lot of, like I said earlier, I did a lot of research and I took classes and all that, I'm learning all the holds and everything, the football hold and stuff. But, when you actually have that baby, and when you actually are like responsible for feeding the baby, I just realized how much I didn't know and how much I didn't expect. And I wasn't aware of the discomfort for one. I did not, like, there are just things that people did not tell you. Even in my class, I remember no one telling me that as you, like the first few weeks of breastfeeding your baby after birth, your uterus is like getting back to its regular size, and which involves like cramping and contraction feelings. No one told me that. So I'm like breastfeeding in pain, like trying to get in comfortable positions and holding the baby and knowing that I need to pay attention to that process of like feeding my child, but also going through a lot of physical discomfort. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And that happening during my maternity leave, not really knowing if actually getting back to work was going to be a possibility. I'm like, how long is this going to last? Like, am I going to be able to actually be a mom who works and feeds her baby and that sort of thing? So I think just like a lot of anxiety related to it, feeling like I'm in charge, but also what you said, Sabrina, is, we're not in control kind of thing. But feeling like a pressure that I didn't necessarily know how to live out once the baby was actually here. And this is something I actually should have mentioned earlier. I'm reminded by it. And probably the reason why I didn't mention it earlier is because I did not take advantage of this. But my job actually allowed. So my job was located in the downtown of where I lived. And so there's a lot of businesses and all the things. There's daycares. And so the daycare that I chose for my child was actually downtown, walking distance from my office. Very convenient. And my job actually would allow me to go to the daycare and nurse my child and then go back to work. That never worked for me.
I love them.
Isn't that great? I never did it. And I never did it because of the reason why I shared with you guys earlier, which is the fact that my child would not latch. And so I was exclusively pumping for her. So that was like also a big challenge, is not navigating it well to where she was able to latch and take a bottle interchangeably. It was like she only would take a bottle at the time. So that for sure was a huge challenge. It prevented me from doing stuff like walking to the daycare and nursing her and then coming back. And also, just ease. I don't know if I won't tell this story because I don't know. I don't want to talk too much. But just the fact that when you go places, I felt like I lost the ability to take advantage of the pros of breastfeeding, which is you don't have to make sure you have clean water somewhere to mix formula, or making sure, if you want to go somewhere quickly, you could really just grab you and the baby and maybe a diaper.
Right.
I lost that ability when I was exclusively pumping. And so there was times where I would take trips. I flew to Hawaii actually when my child was 6 months old, and I'm on that long flight to Hawaii, pumping on the plane to pour it in a bottle to then give it to my baby. And that was like, it was in that moment I knew
never again,
which is why I was so determined to make sure my second child could latch because of those things. So yeah, I would say that was like a huge challenge with my first child.
That story reminded me when my sister, and I've told the story before because my brother-in-law was on the live. We had a live called Fatherhood and Feeding. Actually, Marjorie's husband was on that live as well. It was just a beautiful display of Black men loving their families. Okay, just FYI, you can go check it out on my page. But I remember when my sister first gave birth, she gave birth a few months after me, and she was like, at 4 months, I'm pumping. I'm tired, I'm pumping. 4 months came and went, and she was like, I'm not washing the bottle. I'm not getting up. I'm not going to get up to pump so that I can then have to wash his bottle. She was like, I'm not keeping up with these bottles, because breastfeeding really, some people say breastfeeding is for the lazy mom. It's really, breastfeeding is for the convenient mom. The natural, the one who doesn't want to have to schlep all the stuff around if you don't have to. But then you have EPs, which are exclusive pumpers, who, unfortunately, while they're making this sacrifice to pump for their child, they're also not obtaining those benefits, like you said, of the grab and go. I just peeked into the comments, and Whitney said when they told her that she can leave with the hospital, she was looking at them like, just take the baby? Both times? Just take the baby? Marjorie, what challenges did you experience, if any, when you were pumping at work? Even though I am shocked to hear that people were like, is she even pumping in there? Because why is that your business? But what challenges did you experience pumping in the office?
For as far as work related, I feel like that was the only challenge. People trying to figure out, is she really pumping, or is she, taking a longer break than usual? But those same people had babies later and breastfeed. It was like, oh, I get it now. So I look like, are you pumping in? But it's funny how things would turn. I feel like my work related is fine. As far as for me, I just dedicated like my entire life to my child. Like my lunch breaks was for my child. I came home, gave breastfed because he didn't go to school. Both of them didn't go to daycare for the first year. They were home. Thank God my mom was here. So she would watch them while I was at work, and then I would come. But literally all my time was dedicated to making sure my baby was fed. And my kids, even after a year, they did not drink regular milk. It's just, most of the time that's the norm. They didn't eat as much. It was like breast milk for 2.5 years, which I felt like just took my identity in a sense. Like I don't even know who I was after that. Honestly, it was just my baby, focusing on getting them the best nutrition. And I feel like I lost myself in that, because you having a baby is already a big deal, trying to figure that life out. And then I feel like breastfeeding, take it to the next level. I don't know how they say breastfeeding is for lazy moms. Absolutely not. You have to pump. I didn't have the wireless pumps where you can pump anything else. That cord was with me everywhere I go. So I couldn't even do things while I was pumping. I literally had to sit down with this pump, and I like I said, I had to pump a lot, because you said you had 2 ounces. I had 12 ounces from one boob.
And so that means you had to carry the larger bottles. That's what my mind just went to. You couldn't carry the small bottle.
It was crazy. Like, that's how much it just would not stop. It just kept going and going. I'm telling you, that deep freezer was full.
Oh my goodness.
It was full. And so, it was just me.
People don't even think about that. Like, the fact that you said 12 ounces, my brain went to, okay, now I got to get a Dr. Brown or a Bean. I got to get I got to get a real, like, 12-month-old bottle. I can't take my little.
No, it will overflow in the little bottle. It was
don't judge me for having these right here, but these little bags, halfway full. Okay, halfway full. They were just like, I'm here for you. I could do
Yeah.
it. I got you.
I did 2 or 3 bags in like a session because
Oh my
both
God.
like one would be 8, one would be 12. It was that crazy. I had a crazy oversupply.
I didn't have
You
it
ever
like
have
that. I didn't have it.
You just Janelle's like, no.
I thought I had an oversupply. No.
Did you ever have mastitis, Marjorie?
In the beginning, in the very, very beginning, I did. And then, you put the hot water with the towel and all of
Breast
this. And then I went to the hospital and stuff like that. But after that, no. But that thing just kept
kept
flowing.
going.
Yeah.
And then and just to say, like, you can compare your experience to everybody, because as somebody who was just enough supplier, I had mastitis in the beginning, but that's because I didn't know what I was doing. He wasn't latching well. I was in so much. Every time he latched, I literally took a deep breath and tightened my body so that I would be able to absorb the pain that I knew I was going to experience. And then it was like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm on Facebook on Black Women Do Breastfeed group, and I'm like, somebody help me. Please help me. And they're like, do you have a group that you can go to? And I'm like, I think they said that during the discharge time, but I was going to throw up, so like, it's like, I wasn't paying attention to that. So after they said that, I went and somebody helped me, and it was so much better, but it was like months. Like, I became a lactation counselor because I needed a lactation counselor in my bed with me at 2:00 in the morning, and it was really a struggle. And expectations versus reality. Like, there should be a slideshow for parenthood of like how beautiful you think something's going to happen and what actually happens, because they never really line up. So April, how did you manage your expectations about breastfeeding during maternity leave versus the reality of your experience both times? I would assume that, like you said earlier, you took the experience from your first time and brought that into you for your second time. But how did you manage that reality versus expectations?
I think the first time, and just what you just stated is so important. That support system, when I came home, there was a 2-week period there where I was like in serious doubt. And I'm like, this is not what I expected. I thought that we were going to come home. They told me it was not going to hurt. And I got my methods and techniques of how to get him to latch properly. Like, this is supposed to be working, and it's not. And lo and behold, maybe 2 weeks in, my god sister shows up, and she like just takes over. And I was so thankful in that moment, because I had been there by myself and I had no idea what I was doing. And it was just like, nothing is working. Like, this is all very hard. And that was my turning point. So I knew going into this second baby, and listen, we are still on our nursing journey as we speak.
Yes, baby, Amir.
I knew that there were certain things that I had to have in place. I knew that I was going to need, it was going to be uncomfortable. Like, so much of this is like mental, right? And so much of this is like preparing myself for the hard part. And so just me managing that and giving myself grace too, because I was really hard on myself the first time. Like, I'm in denial about perfectionism, but I was really trying my best to nail it the first time. And this time I was like, I'm here for the vibes. So I went with it, and it was such a different experience. And so for me, I think it was just mentally the adjustment of like, this is going to be difficult for the first couple of weeks. And mind you, I've had 2 C-sections, and recovering from a C-section over 40 is not the same. So there was all these other things. So it was really just me saying to myself, like, you're going to be uncomfortable. This is going to happen. Like, just use what you have in front of you to like get through this. And it passed pretty fast, so it was just me managing and giving myself grace to know that like, this is not going to be easy, but you got it. You already been through this before. So yeah.
Something you said about giving yourself grace, and everybody here is like, I was a little hard on myself, or I thought I was going to be able to do this, and I had this plan, and I had this thought process in place. And I tell my clients, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's easy. Because I just was like, I know this is gonna, what else do I have breasts for? Like, I know I can do this, right? Like, this has to be the reason why I have breasts. And when I was having a hard time latching and I'm in that hospital and I'm crying, and a lactation consultant came in and she was like, hi, she warmed her hands, because shout out to her. She warmed her hands before she placed them on me, helped me. And in 2 seconds, the baby was latched. My son was latched. And I was like, where were you yesterday? Because yesterday the mean nurse on my floor gave my baby formula because she told me that his blood sugars were low. And he was like 12 hours old. I'm like, he was born at 10:45, like last night. It's 8 o'clock. So I had a terrible, like, the person, you have like your favorite nurses on your shift if you have a hospital baby. I had the worst nurse on my shift when my son was born. And she was like, he's gonna go, he's gonna do this, he's gonna do that, he's losing, his sugars are low, he needs. And she was like, and I know how to do it quick. And she took my baby and fed him by herself. And I was looking at her like, and if I ever see her in the streets. So, expectations versus reality for Marjorie. What were something you said earlier really hit with me, because you said you lost yourself during that time because you were so concerned about sustaining your young in the way that you wanted to, sustain them. So did you have that expectation? Did everybody tell you like, hey, you might lose yourself in this time? What was your expectation and reality, like big aha moment for you during your journey?
I think people would tell you a whole bunch of stuff because they can only tell you their experience. But I just tell people there is no experience like yourself. I could tell you my experience. I could tell you what I think may happen, but you're gonna have your own journey.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they didn't prepare me because they probably didn't know that I was that crazy and obsessive and possessive and stuff like that. But the expectation really was it's gonna be smooth sailing. And when I first got out the hospital, like I said, those first 10 days were so painful. And then I have a Caribbean mom where she like, so you're not going to feed the baby formula? She was like half and half. And I'm like, no. So I had to like kind of fight my way through her. It's like those first 10 days were really, really hard. Like going through a hard time, her seeing me going through a hard time, and it's like, putting the doubt in my head. You don't want to give your baby formula. You don't get, and I'm like, no, this is what I really want to do. But my husband, he is the one who really forced me because he was like, there's a breastfeeding support group. I need you to go. And I was like, I don't want to go. I don't know if it's to be helpful. When I say that man was pissed off with me, he was like, you're going whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not.
When I went for 1 day, guys, and they taught me how to properly latch my baby. And from then on, it was like, let's go. We got this.
Mm-hmm.
It was like smooth sailing. So I thank God for that. But no, that expectation thinking that I have a whole bunch of nieces and nephews. So I've been an auntie for a very long time. My first niece was born when I was 8. And so you think you know stuff? Child, when I tell you God had me eat every single word, thinking that I know I'm gonna do this and I'm not going to do that. Listen, I ate every single word. My expectation versus reality were two different things. Now,
Yes.
with the second baby, great, because I learned so much from my first baby that the second baby, everything was so much easier. He latched on properly. Breastfeeding was great. Had set those boundaries with your parents and friends and tell them this is what I'm going to do, whether you like it or not. I don't want to hear your opinion.
Yep.
And so second baby, everything was much better. Expectation, reality were quite the same. That first one, just 368, 180. It was totally different.
All of it.
Yeah.
Something you saying, like, people who don't know, my family's also from Haiti, and my mother did not breastfeed us. And but my husband's family, he was breastfed along with his siblings, and I was able to lean into that support system because a lot of times, and I don't know, I can just talk for Haitian people because I'm Haitian. A lot of times Haitian people are like, we're not doing that. And you're like, but why? And they're like, I don't know, but we're not doing that. It's okay, what? Like, can I get at least a reason for it? So when you don't have that support from, certain areas, it's good that you can lean over and tap somebody else for that support. Amina, what about you? What was maybe your gap between your expectations versus reality?
So I'm gonna go a little bit different because this is something that definitely hits home with me. My expectations were coming from social media and what I was seeing happening for other people. And we've said it earlier on this call, you know, everyone's journey is different. So when you're seeing, you know, the freezers full of milk, and I felt I was an underproducer, and it was making me feel even more and more that I was underproducing. That was really hard for me. But my reality came in when I started seeking support, and I was blessed that the hospital I delivered Chase at, they had a lactation consultant who would visit if you needed support. So they came to the house, and she broke out her scale. And this is like just now that I'm in the world of lactation, it's like one of the easiest things you could possibly think of. She broke out her scale and she put the baby on the scale and said, "This is how much he weighs right now. Now let's feed him." And, you know, she sat and talked to me and we fed him for 15 minutes, you know, and it gave him both breasts and it was great. And then put him on the scale and she says, 3.5, 4 ounces. You
Yep.
have fed him a full bottle
Yep.
in the 15 minutes. You have, and she just, it was like that. It instantly took me out of my brain because, you know, I'm thinking nothing's happening because I didn't know, you know? So I was able to say, okay, I need to stop expecting to have what other people have. And it's just me and him. And we're going to figure this out. And please know there was an Amazon delivery the next day with a baby scale because poor Chase was on
You
that
bought
scale
a baby scale, Amina?
I had to make sure. So we still have it. So yeah, no, I had to make sure. And then once I got comfortable and I knew, it was just smooth sailing from there.
Okay, I love you. First of all, the fact that you bought a baby scale that lactation professionals use for baby feedings is hilarious. But also, maybe I might suggest that to some of my moms because, you know, I don't want to, but
reassurance. It's reassurance.
Exactly. If people need that reassurance, because I will tell people, is your baby, you know, doing this? You know, we're doing milestone checks, or we're doing this. Is the baby gaining weight? You know, all of the different things, and they're still like, but I don't know. I'm like, you have a 16-pound 4-month-old. Your baby is eating, you know, trust in your body. But, you know, some people need to actually see it. And that's one of the things that scares moms is because they can't see the milk going into their child. Right. Even though, you know, A plus B equals C and B and C is happening, then you can assume that A is happening. But when it's up to you, you're kind of just like, oh, I'm not really sure. Janelle, what was your big expectation versus reality experience on this journey?
You know, as you guys were talking, I'm just like relating to all of it. So it's like, yes, whatever y'all said, yes, you know, so that's a big part of it is, Amina, I definitely related with you and just not really knowing, like, is he getting enough? Like, you know, is she eating? Like, you know, what is happening here? I really want to see. And so I think that was something that I definitely was dealing with my first, for sure. At the second and third, it got easier, especially because, like I said, my second child, she never took a bottle and she's still alive to this day. So I got to the point where, you know, your mind shift changes after you've done it once. And so I did it with my first. And then, you know, if I had to pick a silver lining in the exclusively pumping life that I lived with my first child, it was the fact that I'm always seeing that my body is doing what it's supposed to do. Like it's making this food, it's making this food, it's making this food. I'm feeding my baby. She's living and thriving. So, you know, if I had to pick a silver lining, let me not say that, because I think people who exclusively breastfeed and if they do it for a choice, there's reasons for that. And if that's what works well for you, that's what worked well for you. I did not like that as my experience. And so I which is why I wanted to change it so much when I had my second child. But yeah, so expectation versus reality, I just feel like with that first child, it's completely like, it's not going to be the reality is not going to be what your expectation is. It's just not. Show me a woman who's
on that first one, right?
With that first child. Show me somebody. I would love to talk to that person. But yeah, I think everything was outside of what I expected. I also had family that my mom had, I'm one of five. My mom had 5 children. I'm also a twin. And so my mom didn't breastfeed my twin and I just because she would need to do so much. I also have a brother who's just 1 year older than me. And so she had all these little babies and
I'm sorry. What number are you guys? What number are you?
We're 3 and 4.
Oh,
yeah. And she had another child soon after, not that far after me. And then another child older than my brothers. Anyways, she just had a lot of children. Yeah. And so she didn't really breastfeed. I think she only breastfed maybe one of us. And so there was never, I didn't get, and on my husband's side of the family, his mom didn't either. And so no one was really like championing me to breastfeed. It wasn't like, oh, you can do it. You got, so it was really just about whether or not I wanted to. I wouldn't even say, no one was against me breastfeeding. No one was saying, okay, just give her formula. I don't think anybody was saying that, but there definitely wasn't a lot of, you can breastfeed, you can do this, from anybody I'm close to, any family member. So I think that was also like a shift in what I may have been expecting and what I actually received. But ultimately I think that if moms know that, hey, the reality probably isn't going to be what you expect, then that also helps when you enter into it. It's like, you can make all your plans, even with just labor and delivery. You can make your birth plan. You can decide exactly how you want it to
all
go.
of us are like, yup, yeah.
I had a whole plan. Like I said, I took this Bradley method class. I was going to have this natural birth. It was going to be beautiful. Women have been having babies naturally for millions of years, that kind of thing. So yeah, just if you look at it in those eyes, like, hey, I can make a plan. I can decide exactly how this is going to go. But I also need to know that there's flexibility in the fact that it probably won't look like this,
Yeah.
What about baby number 3? What was your experience with baby number 3? Was it combo? Was it latch? What did that look like?
Combo's the word. And he was like the best of both worlds in this sense. So I also wasn't trying to get pregnant with him. I always tell people my husband and I were just irresponsible, but so I wasn't actually wanting another child. I love my son and I can't imagine life without him, but I had 2 girls, was my first and my second. I knew girls, girl mom. I know their parts. Life is great.
Right.
I wind up pregnant with this 3rd child and it's a boy. And I'm like, what's happening here? But I did know that I wanted, with my first being exclusively pumped, with my second being latch only, like she never took a bottle. I did tell myself I'm going to do what I can to, have him be a combo baby. And he took the bottle very well and he latched very well. I also breastfed him the shortest amount of time. And this is no judgment, right? So like I said, wasn't exactly trying to have a child, but I knew breast milk was the best nutrition for my baby. And I told my husband and everybody who would listen that I'm just going to give him as much good nutrition for just some months, and then I'm going to cut it off. So that's what I did. He got like maybe half a year, and but he latched very well and took the bottle very well during that time. And yeah, he was my combo baby.
Your combo baby. Listen, we say any drop of breast milk is beautiful. Months of breast milk is beautiful. And sometimes you're like, yeah, no, I didn't have any plans for this. I'm going to do my best. This is my timeline.
I'm trying to do right by you.
Yeah, I'm going to do right by you. This is my timeline. And I just realized that all of us are boy moms except for Janelle. And I think I was thinking that when I was typing that the other day. But it's really interesting to see the multiple, the different journeys, because not my dog barking, because Amina and I, we only have one child. So like hearing the different experiences that you guys have, it's good, because I still do want another child. So, whenever that does, Amina, get back in this.
Where'd she go?
She dipped back real quick. It's good to know that, even though it's gonna be a little rusty, that I'll be starting from experience, because my husband always tries to tell me this because he's such an optimist. Sometimes he drives me crazy, and I'm like, I gotta start over. I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, you're not starting from scratch, baby.
You know exactly what you're doing now, and every child is going to be different.
Experience.
Mhm.
I'm like, be quiet. I didn't come here for a pep talk. I came here to vent, and I need you to just accept that. So hearing from you guys, and this is just a beautiful example of how companies can provide resources, like I said, valuable, intentional resources to their employees, can really be a game changer. Janelle, I'm going to come to you for our last question of the day. And I know that you mentioned and you told us earlier that your experience with your first child led you to make the decision to, stay home with the next two whenever you were having them. How did, well, I know your answer, but this is going to be for everybody as well. How did your breastfeeding and maternity experience impact your overall career progression? How did that work for you?
Yeah. So as you said, I took 13 weeks off for maternity leave with my first child, and went back to work, put her in daycare. She was in daycare for 1 month before we pulled her out of daycare, and I made the decision to leave my job. And that was almost solely due to not liking, I think there's some great childcare facilities out there, and sometimes you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Where we were living, we had the freedom and the flexibility, and praise God, to be able to survive life with only one income. And so that's what we chose to do. I didn't like our daycare experience, and I didn't like all the things I had to do with nursing or pumping at that time. And so ended up coming home. Now, what did that do for career progression? And I actually am grateful for it now. I think when I was in the throes of it, I was like, why did I do this? Like, people are still working, and they're like excelling and getting promotions. And, I had my first child. I told you guys earlier, my first child, she's now 6. And my second one is 5. So that shows you that I, boom, got pregnant, right? Right after that. And so I didn't go back to work. And honestly, I didn't go back to work till just a handful of months ago. So I was home with I didn't go back to work in like a formal capacity. I was always doing things. And I used to tell people they're my side gigs. I used to always do things, but in no formal capacity until about four months ago. And so now that I'm back into the work world, and I made the decision to leave work those years ago for my children. But now that I'm back, sometimes I'm thinking, where could I have been had I just stuck with working and decided to just see it through and continue to pump and go to work and send her to daycare and all that kind of that thing. So on one hand, that's how I feel. On the other hand, I did like a career pivot after I left work and COVID hit, and found that I was passionate about other industries. And so I don't think I would have been able to explore that or tap into that had I not left my job and kind of been forced to explore more of what I actually like to do. And so now I'm doing something that I absolutely love doing. I truly enjoy it. And I work 100% remote now, which is great. Oh my gosh. Never go.
You can never go back.
Highly recommend. Because before I was going into the office, I was working downtown.
Yep.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And so now it's like having that freedom and flexibility. So I think in many ways, my breastfeeding journey kind of led me to my career now. So shout out to my breastfeeding journey.
I love that. Right. I love that. I think I mentioned this earlier, but when I wasn't receiving the support that I needed in the way that I needed it, because she might be watching, it's my mama. I was like, hey, this lady has been a nurse for like 35 years. I used to be an engineer. So she was like, she used to call me Dr. Google. She was like, "You're Dr. Google. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm a nurse. You don't know that." And I'm like, okay, the only way that I could fight fire with fire, fight this woman is with knowledge, because she's gonna look at me like, you are an IT person. You have no idea about the medical field. And if only she knew that nurses barely got lactation education, and doctors as well. So I literally went to go become a lactation counselor so that I could have the confidence and the knowledge to argue with people who didn't support me. And if that's not a career pivot, because I left engineering, I left IT 3 years ago so that I can be like, hey, one, they were dragging me down. And I just, when you realize that you're at your point and you're just like, I got to go. And then my breastfeeding journey led to the Aladun tree, because I literally needed, once I realized that I needed the help, I also noticed that people were tapping me for help. They're like, oh, she knows something now. Let me ask her. And I'm like, oh, you need help? Everybody needs. Hold on. Give me it still took me 5 years, but it took me 5 years from after getting my certification to actually launching the Aladun tree, because I then felt like ready to do it. But breastfeeding did have a big impact in that, and for me. April, what about you? How did your breastfeeding and maternity leave impact your career progression? I know that you've been virtual, so you don't have the commute to go into, but you literally have everything else.
Yeah.
What was that experience for you?
I don't know. I think overall there's been little to no real impact. I've been promoted probably twice since I've had both children, but in terms of what I want to do with my career currently, and where I am, I'm doing work that I love, and I really have this sense of feeling like I am where I need to be right now. I have the flexibility I need to be there and prioritize my family, mm-hmm. and do the work that I love. And so in terms of do I want to be further along in my career? Actually, I don't have that desire right now. That's not where I am. So I am happy and content where I am with raising my family and also doing good work. So that is, I don't think it has had any negative impact on my career journey.
So, what you just said, and I think something Janelle said earlier, and actually no, Amina said it earlier, where she was like, after having her child, it was like, it was a difference. It was a big difference, right?
It was a difference.
After having my child, I was like, oh, there's something more to then climbing this ladder. It's something more to being. But what was interesting is, before I had a child, I think I was a consultant, or I was an analyst. So I was at very entry level. And I will never forget talking to one of the managers. He was trying to make senior manager at the time. This is like 10 years ago. And he hadn't seen his child for 2 weeks. And they lived in the same house. And he was not traveling. He had not seen his child awake in 2 weeks. So he would leave before his child got up, and came home before after his child went to sleep. So he never got he didn't get a chance to bond with his kid for 2 weeks because of all the work that he was doing, and he was being overworked. And when I saw that, I was like, oh no, I don't want to follow those footsteps. I like my sanity, and I don't want to follow those footsteps. And becoming a parent and breastfeeding helped me kind of jolt me into that. Amina, for you, how did it have an impact? Your breastfeeding and maternity leave have an impact on your career progression? I know it did.
Girl, because I'm like, that is what happened. I, having those moments and working out, obviously, I tell you, I came from an insurance-based company. I'm not going to mention the name, but a big insurance company, and put in all the work, all the hours, and doing the pumping. And it was just very, very overwhelming, especially just all the things that you think about and what was important to me. And I had kind of one of those mental breakdowns where I just cried under my desk. Mm-hmm. And, we don't talk about it a lot, but postpartum, people talk a lot about postpartum depression, but not postpartum anxiety, which is a real thing that I didn't know until I started this journey. So once I had that break and I realized what was happening, I had to stop, and I left. And funny enough, I became a peer educator with Children's National and the DC Breastfeeding Coalition. And it was the biggest blessing. As someone who was 40, struggling with breastfeeding, and just transitioning to become a new mom, and I had all the things necessary for me to be successful, and I still was struggling. I said, I can't, there's got to be other people out there or other women
Mm-hmm.
out there that are going through this. And that's what started my trajectory. And after becoming a peer educator and growing with the coalition, I then started with AmeriHealth, which is a Medicaid insurance company. And so God just allowed me to bring both of my worlds together
Mm,
because my background was in insurance for so
right.
many years. And now I can do it in a way where I'm truly giving back and still doing the work that I love to do and where my passion lies, and just align with what he had for me in the first place. Because who becomes a mom at 40? And girl, you were supposed to start. I was supposed to be done, so that I just got into alignment, and it started my journey on.
It's so, people do talk about PPD. They don't talk about the anxiety. They don't talk about PPA. They don't talk about the bad. They always talk about the good because they don't want to scare you, right? Like, you don't want to scare that new parent and you tell them this, but then you also kind of leave them out to hang, to dry, because you don't know, because they don't expect the possible worst, or what could be the worst thing I could experience. And having a mental crash at work while you're trying to work, be a person, sustain a human, can be so overwhelming. And I'm going to have a discussion about that. I'm going to have a live about that, for what that mental load is for moms and families, because you still have to go back home to your man or your partner, or you just have to go back home, and the way that you are feeling is 100% impacting your family and your nucleus. So that's a really big point. Marjorie, our last answer for the day. What about you? Did breastfeeding and maternity leave have any impact at all on your career progression?
I think it did, because it showed me the freedom you can have when you're not working. Like, oh my gosh, I really could be a full-time mom and not have to worry about these fools asking me for this and this, and emailing and going to meetings that they not saying nothing in. I could really be home, like just focusing on my baby, loving on my baby. And then, when I'm ready to bring him to daycare, I could do that. And so from then on, I was like, you know what? I really want to, time freedom really became very important to me.
Mm,
A lot of people talk about, I talk about it a lot, generational wealth, but really that has to do with having the time freedom to truly build something. And so I started in real estate on the side and grew my business, my Airbnb business, until I was able to quit my job and replace my salary.
yes.
And now it ain't easy, because some days I'd be like, 2 weeks pay, I kind of miss that.
Every 2 weeks, like clockwork.
But the time freedom that I have to spend to do all the activities, like now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I was still working, how am I able to bring my child to soccer practice and swimming practice and being able to, just play with them? Oh my God, it is so much to do, mom. So for me to have that transition, like that really like opened my eyes to just embrace that freedom, that it could just be me and my kids and just pouring into them, because they're like, time is flying. They're not gonna be
100%.
here for long in the house. And so yeah, it really pushed me to really seek time freedom and what that really feels like. And so I'm definitely experiencing that now. Still building. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it for sure.
Definitely worth it. Two things. One, Marjorie is one of my business accountability partners, and there are times when we look at each other in the face and we're like, "Are we applying to a job?" And then we're like, "No, put your hand down. No, we're not doing that. We can do it. It's a hard day. It's a hard week. Don't quit on a hard day. We can make it work." And then Janelle, earlier when you said, after the baby, you decided to stay home and you went back in. Before you said you love your job, I thought you were gonna say, "And I'm gonna stay my butt back." Because for me, I'm only 3 years out of a corporate America structure, and I'm like, I'm never going back. Not full time, and the bad thing is, like, I still love technology, so I'm like, let me get a little dabble somewhere, so I can, like, Amina was able to bring both of her passions together to do one. So it's like, breastfeeding, either it's intentionally blowing up the spot and saying, hey, you want to do something different, or it slowly puts in different POVs where then you make a change. Like you bridge your two companies together. You still do what you're supposed to be doing. And traveling, April, Janelle, you take a step out of the work field, even though you were doing your side gigs, you were still working. You just weren't in a corporate office. And then Marjorie, you completely moving from that and saying, hey, I want this time freedom, because the time I had with my child was invaluable. My maternity leave I was very blessed. My maternity leave was 6 months. That's not true. It was 4 months. It was 4 months. And then I took an additional 5 months because I'm not coming. I'm not coming. And I'm not coming. And I will see you guys when I come back. But I happened to come in the time where literally a month before I gave birth, they doubled the maternity leave. And then I had months of PTO, because who uses PTO? You're trying to climb the ladder. So I had months of PTO. And then I was on this thing called the bench. And I wore that bench out because I didn't want to leave my baby. And, he was home for 9 months. My sister-in-law came for 3 months. And then at one, like Marjorie, he went to daycare down the street. And the freedom to be. Breastfeeding gave me the freedom to be. And I wanted to stay in that zone. So I just want to say I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for coming to share your input on this Good Friday. And I am grateful that this
live.
Say what?
Can I say something before you close out?
Oh, go ahead.
I really want to give a shout out to you, Sabrina, because these lives have really blessed my life. Like, where were you when I had my kids? Okay. Because just going through all your lives, I'm thinking wow, a lot of the time when people are going through their breastfeeding journey, especially, the moms, if something doesn't go right, we're like, it's all me. We're thinking it's me. But from your lives, I learned that, wow, it could be something with the baby. It could be something with, the tongue tied. I never knew anything about that. Your child may need physical therapy. I learned so much. I'm blown away. Wow, that really could have probably blessed me. And I'm hoping it's blessing others to know that this journey don't always blame yourself. Like you said, constantly give yourself grace, because baby, it could be a whole bunch of different circumstances that causes your breastfeeding journey to be what it is. But just keep going. Try to figure it out. Do the research and listen to Sabrina Lives, because she could be for real, I'm very proud of you, and I'm very thankful for all that information. And I don't plan on having a baby, but if a baby pop up,
be responsible. Be responsible. Don't be like me.
I have this encouraging information moving forward on my journey, because I wish I knew the things that you were teaching everybody on your lives now. It's really, really encouraging. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I learned, the reason I have lives is chat it up, but I learned too. I learned so much. We had a live about feeding, dental feeding, and what that what dental your dental hygiene is, and versus breastfeeding and how that works. And I had IBCLCs and a child pediatric dentist, and I was in the live like, oh, what? I was supposed to, when he had one tooth, he was supposed to every 6. It was just so many things that I just didn't know. So I appreciate that. And I'm actually really happy that this live was scheduled during Black Breastfeeding Week. So annually, the last week of August, Black Breastfeeding Week happens. And August is National Breastfeeding Month, but Black Breastfeeding Week allows a community to stand up and say their piece without all the noise. It allows us to get our things to the forefront. And you'll see some people who are doing things who normally don't. Sometimes I feel like it's pandering, but who normally don't include Black and brown images, and they do it during this week. And instead of me thinking that it's pandering, I'm just glad that it's being, exposed. So I'm just happy that we were able to have this conversation. And this year they have a different theme every year. So this year's theme is reclaiming our narrative and centering our stories for breastfeeding justice. And I believe one of the ways we can do that is to reclaim our narrative is to continue to talk about it, right? is to encourage a narrative that's either being silenced or create a brand new one. Every time we have a discussion, it opens a lane for education. Every time we have a discussion, it opens a lane for community. Every time we have an exchange, it opens a lane for possibilities and solutions. So I just want to thank you guys so much for your time today and joining me on this live. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Have
So
a
nice
beautiful
to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Bye. I appreciate you guys. And normally during this time, you know, all of my folks, they're like, okay, I'm heading out, and they're going to go do their thing. But for the folks who are still on here, I wanted to introduce something to you guys. I didn't see any questions in the comment section, by the way, which is why we didn't do a Q&A. But there are so many times, and in this conversation, that we discuss some of the things that we needed that we didn't get a chance to get. And as I said earlier, I want to be the solution. I want to be the thing that I was looking for. So I wanted to introduce you guys to a program called Leave and Lactation by the Aladoon Tree. So if you guys don't know, I have a corporate branch, essentially. So it's a corporate lactation program that assists or organizations into and how they can better support their resources. But I realize that it also needs to happen on the resource end, right? Because you can be, your company can be prepared for you, but if you're not prepared, that's an issue. So my Leave and Lactation program does exactly that. It helps prepare you to reclaim your return to work, to reclaim your breastfeeding journey, and to reclaim your decision to breastfeed and pump when you return back into the office. And I'm really, really excited about it. It is a 4-week program. It is once a week and is virtual. And the reason I decided to do it virtual was because I want to make sure that anybody can access it. I didn't want to just, gatekeep it to the DMV. So it is a virtual online program. We are going to be launching in the fall of 2024 in a month and a half. So it's going to be live the first week of October. And we have 4 different modules. We have 4 different modules where we discuss your return to work. We discuss your lactation education. We discuss your plans at home, and we discuss how you will be able to meet your breastfeeding goals as well as your career goals when you return back into the office. It is a $350 investment, and it can also be paid using your HSA or FSA funds. Because what's the point of scrambling at the end of December trying to spend all that money at the eye doctor when you could be using it for something for you? And as we know, when the mother is taken care of in the family, everybody else feels it. So whether you are the person who is expecting, or somebody else who is expecting, or your wife is going to be expecting, or a family member, I believe that this program will absolutely be valuable to them, because they will be able to understand how to prepare themselves the best that you can on your journey back into the office. So I'm really excited. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be sharing additional information about my Leave and Lactation program, and I'm going to put it in the comment section on my Instagram video and my LinkedIn video. I'm going to drop a link in there that if you're interested in learning more information about the program, registering for the Leave and Lactation program, you have 4 weeks to sign up. And just as I believe all of my lives are valuable, I absolutely know that this is going to be valuable to you all. So thank you guys for joining. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful long weekend, and stay safe.